Hello and welcome to another podcast. So, I think the last time we did a podcast was about maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to keep into a habit of doing a podcast. So, I was like, okay, I have about 20 minutes to spare, and I'm just going to sit down and just. I don't really actually have a plan. I'm just going to just talk about a book that I read recently, and hopefully, get people take some sort of benefit out of it. I actually just kind of picked it up and I was like, all right, what can I talk about today? And the first thing that came up was one of the books I read in a couple of months ago called Quiet by Susan Cain, I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's like spelled Cain, I think it's Cain, but yeah, I don't know. It's unless someone can kind of correct me on it. But basically, this book is the main like kind of theme of this book is that it challenges the challenges society and its bias between like people who are extroverted or who are kind of outgoing. They're kind of happy to be involved in every single thing. They get kind of like depressed and lonely if they're by themselves for a long time. Kind of people who are very sporty, very active. They like to go and express themselves to anybody, any situation, and the difference between extroverted person and it celebrates and the difference between an introverted person who's like more than happy to be by themselves, be left to their own devices, like social situations kind of like exhaust them a little bit. They're kind of more likely to be inside and like I suppose like me for example, record a podcast, read a book, just to chill out and be happy to be left alone. So what this book does, it challenges the bias between extroversion and introversion. The book also it explores the science between both introversion and extroversion, like, and it highlights the strengths and contributions of an introvert. So, basically, this is I actually would recommend this book if you are very quiet, even if you aren't even if you're more of an extrovert, I probably would recommend this book because it kind of does. If you're ever like curious about why you're so shy, or if someone is so shy, or they're like kind of like to be left alone, or if they're quiet, this book kind of does go into the key points of this. So just piggybacking off this, the key points of this book are introverts are misunderstood. So this book, it basically sheds a light on the misconception that introverts are simply shy. Like the author Susan differentiates like introversion based on these like preferences of brain stimulation, and that basically kind of follows on with saying like introverts need less external stimulation for optimal performance, and the power of quiet. It discusses how like the power of being quiet discusses that introverts like possess these valuable strengths um really good listening skills, they're really good at deep thinking, and they're really good at creativity. It also like showcases like how successful introverts in can be in depending on their fields of like interest or fields of work. Um, and it also like goes into studies how introverts in these various fields have made significant contributions to like say a growth of company or growth of profits, or how they kind of like bring benefit to other employees around them. And the power of quiet also introduces this idea of like a quiet revolution, which is driven by like introverts like leveraging in their strengths. And after like she goes through the like first kind of basis of this book, she goes on to this section called thriving as an introvert. So there are practical tips involved in like this book on how introverts can navigate work environments and social situations that favor extroverts. So these strategies include, valuing like introverts valuing their quiet time. Like they like this the strategies include encouraging individual reflection. They seek out environments that cater to like introverted preferences, and like it's all then in this, later on this book it talks about creating a balanced world. So this book like encourages workplaces and social settings to be more kind of like inclusive for introverts, like simple adjustments like valuing solitude and offering flexible work arrangements can benefit towards introverts and extroverts. So overall, this book quiet. It's like it's very insightful and like empowering read for kind of both introverts and extroverts. Like it challenges like preconceived notions, like it celebrates introverted strengths, it offers practical advice for like living authentically in a world that like glorifies extroversion. Like while like some readers might prefer a deeper dive into the science, like the book's strength lies in its accessibility and its ability to spark conversations about creating a more balanced and inclusive world. And yeah, like the book is basically kind of a landmark, it's like a foundation for people who are quiet, and it's like shifted. It has shifted the conversation around introversion. So the explanation goes like beyond simply defining like what extroverts are. Like it dismantles like the stereotypes. Like it celebrates their strengths and offers like a compelling vision for a world that embraces both introverts and extroverts. So yeah, I think as I went over just kind of a general base of it, so I'll just kind of go through it like bit by bit. So we have chapter one, which is called let me see, I have the book in my hand here. It's called the Challenging the Extrovert Ideal. So this book does open by like confronting like as I discussed earlier, the societal bias towards extroversion. So Susan Cain exposes like the extrovert ideal that permutates our culture, like from corporate settings that favor loud brainstorming sessions to social norms that equate quietness with shyness, through like engaging like and historical references. Like she like highlights count like a few examples of successful introverts, like along these like famous people like she mentioned, like Albert Einstein, Rosa Parks, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates, like amongst many others. And this reframing like allows introverts to recognize their own potential and challenges like the misconception that success like necessitates a booming personality. And then part two of this book discusses like the actual science of both an introvert and an extrovert. So part two is called like your biology, like yourself. So the author Susan Cain like delves in between like the cultural stereotypes and explores the neurological underpinnings of like both introversion and extroversion. And drawing on this like scientific research that she has, like she explains how introverts and extroverts like differ in their brain like stimulation preferences. So like obviously like an introvert's brain would work a lot different to an extrovert's brain, where like one's obviously a lot slower and one is a lot like kind of faster and more rapid. So just for example, like an introvert for example tends to be more sensitive to external stimulation so I say, and requires like less of it to feel energized, which is obviously the opposite then for an extrovert. And like this need for quiet reflection is often misinterpreted as social awkwardness. So that kind of like goes into why whenever you're in a kind of a social situation and you're with someone who's a bit more on the quieter side, or kind of is a bit more like, you ever speak to someone and they're kind of like the energy's kind of off. It's kind of like it's just the way their brain kind of works, especially if they're not used to social situations. Like if they grew up like being quiet and just grew up kind of doing their own thing. Then part three of this book discusses like, do all cultures have an extrovert ideal? And like one of the book's greatest strengths is its like celebration of introverted qualities, often like viewed as weaknesses. So deep thinking, like a hallmark of introverts, like fosters like creativity, problem solving skills, and the ability to focus intently. Um, like the introverts like exceptional listening skills like makes them like really good team members, and like more empathetic to like, especially if they're like kind of the manager of a company, or if they're like kind of leading a team or just kind of a team leader. The book Quiet like emphasizes the importance of like introspective work in solitude, like highlighting how these qualities can lead to profound insights and innovation. And like to thrive as an introvert in an extroverted world, like the book recognizes the challenges introverts face in a world that prioritizes extroverted behaviors. But the author, again, like I discussed earlier, like offers practical strategies for introverts to navigate such situations in professional environments that can feel draining, like from advocating for like quiet workspaces to managing conversations and learning to say no. Like these tips like would empower introverts to thrive without compromising their authentic selves. So in case you're ever like kind of shy and quiet, and you're probably more on the introvert side, and you kind of work in just kind of like a large setting, or if you're in like a big building or whatever, like a job where you have to basically interact with people all day, and there's lots of noise around you, like these tips like definitely would kind of make your mind think a little bit differently on like how you approach the way you work. And then if we're like to move towards like a balanced world, like beyond empowering like extroverts, like quiet, like the book Quiet encourages like a broader societal shift. So the author for she discusses in the book that she calls for workplaces and social settings to become more inclusive. So simple adjustments like such as valuing quiet time, like offering flexible work arrangement, and incorporating like you know an individual's reflection opportunity can benefit both like sides of the coin. So they can benefit both an introvert and an extrovert, and recognizing and leveraging like the strength of both personality types like leads to richer collaborations and a more balanced and dynamic environment for everybody. So yeah, there is like obviously kind of potential criticisms, like while like the book may not resonate as deeply with like some people as they crave a more scientific exploration of introversion. Like the book focuses primarily on like the social and cultural aspects of introversion. So with less like with for example less emphasis on the detailed neurological mechanisms behind it. Like some extroverts may feel the book paints a personality, like it might paint their personality type in less of a favorable light. So yeah, I think I've pretty much like discussed kind of all this book in the last like 10 minutes or so. It's actually not too long of a read. It's maybe about I think it's about 200 I think it's about 260 pages in the copy I have in my hand here. um but yeah, I probably would give it a decent enough rating. Probably give it like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. I definitely, my conclusion of it is like it's definitely like a gives you more of an insight into like it's more of a transformative read for both parties of introversion and extroverts. Sorry, I don't know why I keep messing up my words, but yeah, it's transformative read for both introverts and extroverts. Like introverts can gain practical advice, validation, and a newfound sense of like belonging. And if an extrovert read this book, they'd probably gain a deeper understanding of their like introverted counterparts, and like learn how to appreciate the unique strengths they bring to the table. So yeah, ultimately this book fosters like a more inclusive and balanced world where everyone, regardless of personality type, can thrive and contribute their unique talents. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm not going to waffle on too much longer, but yeah, that's definitely kind of what that's my kind of 2 cents on the book Quiet. And if you wanted to just kind of get more of an insight onto like the power of introversion in the world, then yeah, I definitely would pick this up. Like it's not too expensive either. It's like I think it's about like maybe 15 to 15 euro, I think, or something like that. Between like 12 to 18 euro. It wasn't actually overly expensive. And yeah, I won't. It's an easy enough read as well, especially if you're like a beginner reader as well. If you're like, kind of new enough to reading, but yeah, it's not too hard of a book to read. It's not like one of those books that are gonna kind of be daunting to start on and finish. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, and hopefully see you in the next podcast soon, which I hope will be very soon. Because yeah, I need to kind of keep a habit going with this. I can't just like leave it for 2 years. But yeah, thanks for listening, and speak to you next time.